Okay, my dudes. We have some pretty big news here to the point where I think we have to come out. We have to do an emergency podcast. I have to go over this. Now, I'm not going to be giving y'all an update on every single training camp injury. So, of course, we'll do that in the coming days. But make sure you're just subscribed to the channel. Make sure you have that bell next to the subscribe button hit. That way you know when we go live. That way you can come out here because y'all know, I live stream every single night. I'm really the only person going through and showing y'all exactly what I can do with fantasy football, live streaming every single night on Underdog Fantasy, playing with all of y'all at the same time. So make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you hit that bell so you can come out. You can play in some drafts against me because if you think you're better than me, well, perfect. Come and prove it. We got real money on the line every single night. So regardless of if you like the channel, come out to the drafts. Regardless of if you hate the channel, you hate me, well, come prove that you're better than me. Come get in some real fantasy football leagues with me. So yeah, let me go through. Let me send out a notification on Discord to let people know that we are live right now. And then we can go through, we can start to discuss a few major things that I think we need to talk about. Let me see the chat, just making sure that we're okay. Okay, yeah, we're all good here, guys. Make sure you go through, make sure you drop a like on the live stream. And what do y'all want me to get into first? You want me to get into Indianapolis or New Orleans? Because I think both of these situations need to be discussed. I'm actually going to go talk about Michael Thomas first because Michael Thomas, this news kind of broke yesterday. And honestly, y'all know a lot of training camp news, I'm kind of overlooking it. If you hear a beat reporter saying, oh, so-and-so wide receiver X made a fantastic catch, or so-and-so running back Y doesn't look that explosive in this training camp, that beat reporter usually is just trying to put something out there, get some traction going along with it, and just try to get retweets and hype people up about certain players. Doesn't necessarily mean a lot. Now, of course, you have to pay attention to training camp. You just have to make sure you're paying attention to what actually matters. And we had a massive story coming out about Michael Thomas that definitely has a large impact on where we should be drafting him this year. Because we go through, we pull this up, right? So we know that there was no sign that Michael Thomas was going to be missing the beginning of the season when we were just going through talking about fantasy football drafts about 2 months ago. And the reason for that was Michael Thomas completely ghosted the New Orleans Saints. And of course, you have to look at this and you have to kind of make adjustments based on what you think the Saints could be doing this upcoming season based around this. Because what happened is Michael Thomas ghosted the Saints. He stopped replying to their training staff. He stopped replying to Sean Payton. He stopped replying to the wide receivers coach. Nobody could get to him for 3 months. He wasn't replying to any of their text messages. And this was during the period where they were supposed to be rehabbing the ankle. They were supposed to be going through and doing regular checkups to make sure that he was going to be fine for the season, that they didn't need surgery. And if he was going through with his rehab, it should have been fine. But he goes to the Saints. Now, all of a sudden, he goes back in June and he goes, hey guys, I'm back and my ankle still hurts. And they're like, oh, I wonder why. You haven't been here for 3 months. Where have you been? Why can't we get a hold of you? So then they have to go through and they do surgery. And of course, this story leaks. And then Michael Thomas hates the fact that this leaks. He goes out on Twitter, and y'all know Michael Thomas is always about putting stuff on Twitter. He tweets out, they try to damage your reputation. You save theirs by not telling your side of the story. And now he comes out, and it sounds like Michael Thomas is wanting out of New Orleans. And guys, we have to understand that Michael Thomas is not a Julio Jones. Michael Thomas is not a Tyreek Hill. He is not a wide receiver that is just going to win in any system whatsoever. Now, of course, you can always plug Michael Thomas into an offense, but to utilize his full skill set, you're actually going to need to go through and put him in a very specific role, or at least that's what we had in the New Orleans Saints in 2018 and 2019, where he isn't running any vertical routes. He's mainly doing everything underneath with slants and crossing routes. So I think that's the first thing that we noticed that just goes, okay, well, there are going to be certain teams that are just out on Michael Thomas. They're not going to want to touch him. Then we have to go through, we have to go, okay, well, there are going to be other teams that see that Michael Thomas is one of the highest paid wide receivers in the NFL. And they're going to go, well, we're not willing to bring on that contract. So that just removes that subsection of teams from the NFL. And of course, we don't know what front offices are thinking this way, but I think it's safe to use some simple judgment and say that most likely these are valid points. And then you also have the general managers and the teams that don't necessarily want to bring on a diva wide receiver. And I hate to use that phrase. I think it gets way overused. I think people have a very hard time understanding these athletes. And I want to kind of put everything into context for everybody. I know for us, like for regular people, of course, we look at this situation and we go, okay, well, I would have done this in this instance. But these athletes that made it to the NFL, you have to understand that they were the best athlete in their hometown they were treated like a god from the time that they were most likely 5 years old. That translated over to middle school. That translated over to high school. That translated over to college. And now they're in the NFL. They get paid millions and millions of dollars when they're 21 years old. I'm 22 years old, and I can't even imagine what that kind of money would do to me. So I want to kind of put the little caveat out here that people kind of judging these players, you really have to understand that they lived a completely different life. And I can say that I would have no idea how I personally would act. I would probably be the biggest asshole on the planet, to be completely honest. So when I call Michael Thomas a diva wide receiver, please understand that I'm not doing so to just say, oh, I would never do this. I would probably be way, way worse, to be completely honest. But we do have to understand that he has been someone to go pick fights before. He has been someone to go to Twitter very quickly. And I think that's going to turn off multiple teams from even going out and considering to acquire him. So this situation is very reminiscent of what we had with Antonio Brown and the Pittsburgh Steelers a few years ago, where we know that Antonio Brown had a lot going on. Antonio Brown was posting a lot of stuff on social media. Now, there were some differences between the two. Obviously, Antonio Brown was doing a few more crazy things, but in the case of Michael Thomas, now this is a wide receiver dealing with a significant ankle injury. And then, Antonio Brown goes to Las Vegas, goes to the Raiders. That doesn't work out whatsoever. And he kind of figures it out about 2 years later. And I'm just looking at this with Michael Thomas and going, well, for 2021 fantasy football leagues, I'm going to have a very hard time going out there and drafting him. I've actually been avoiding him in almost every single draft that we have done. I mean, if you're going out to the live streams with us every single night, you're seeing that I'm not drafting Michael Thomas whatsoever. It's a little bit different because we've been drafting in those best ball drafts where we know points matter just as much weeks 1 through 5 as they do weeks 10 through 14. And I have been willing to say that if you're playing in a league where you think that you're going to be a playoff team and you're stacked everywhere else, I'm completely fine grabbing a Michael Thomas in the 8th round. That way he can help you for that playoff stretch. Well, now after this story leaks and Michael Thomas has these trade rumors circulating, I think that this is going to be a situation that is a clear stay away. I mean, if he is going to continue to be drafted in the 7th, 8th round, I can't consider him there. And it's really hard to go through and look at the other receivers that are being drafted in that same range and go, okay, well, I want this receiver over Michael Thomas because we know that Michael Thomas has way more value. But if I pull up our last underdog draft that we did last night, we actually drafted from the 109. We started it. Travis Kelce, DeAndre Hopkins, Terry McLaurin, Patrick Mahomes. A lot of people were out in this live stream. A lot of people saw this draft. But the main thing that I want to look at is I want to go and look at where Michael Thomas ended up getting drafted. So if we go through, Michael Thomas gets drafted at the 801, which I know sounds like a reasonable price. And what's crazy is to look at the players that were drafted after Michael Thomas. The receivers that were drafted directly after him were Darnell Mooney, McCole Hardman, Jalen Waddle, Brandon Cooks, Jarvis Landry, Hollywood Brown. But to be completely honest, even if you're rostering Michael Thomas in a traditional league where you submit your starting lineup each and every week, we also have to understand the price that comes with that is you're going to be losing that bench spot on your roster for half a year. I mean, you're going to be sitting there where you are really kind of tied, where you can't go and find the next James Robinson. You can't go find the next Myles Gaskin from the waiver wire because you've already locked up one of those roster spots on a receiver that we don't know when he's going to return. We don't know if he's going to play another snap for the New Orleans Saints. So right now, I think you have to drop Michael Thomas down. I'm not considering him at all. And now let's kind of focus in on what we're doing with the other players in this offense, where Marquez Callaway is continuing to get so much positive buzz in New Orleans. Now with the Marquez Callaway, I will say this is very similar to a situation that we discussed at the beginning of the live stream, where I don't necessarily want to go through and I don't necessarily want to be viewing him as a player that just because beat reporter told us he's very good, we just buy into it and go, okay, well, Marquez Callaway, I guess he's the wide receiver 1 on the Saints. I still think it's Traquan Smith, but I think Callaway is going to continue to rise in his ADP. And the tight end that I kind of been laughing at people for taking so high, I think we just have to come out. We just have to take our L because if Michael Thomas is gone for the year, I think the red zone role that he could have, as well as just the targets that he's getting in the shorter area of the football field, Adam Troutman has to continue to rise. If I pull up this last underdog draft that we did last night, like I said, guys, we do drafts every single night. We stream them all. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you hit the bell next to the subscribe button and be dropping those likes on the videos as well. If you want to make sure that you know when we go live, that's really the only way that YouTube is going to send you that notification. But if we pull up where Adam Troutman got drafted, so he gets drafted at the 1105, and I've been laughing at that price point. He gets drafted directly behind Robert Tonyan, Irv Smith, Dallas Goedert, Noah Fant, Logan Thomas. And I thought in that range, he was going to be a clear avoid for us. I believe out of like 100 drafts that we have done this offseason, we've maybe drafted Adam Troutman one time. But if we go through and that same tight end that I really was preferring at his current price point, because we know that it was costing a lot less to get him, a Cole Kmet going in the 14th, 15th round, I can't necessarily come out here and say anymore that Adam Trautman in the 11th is bad, because if Thomas does miss the entire year for the Saints, he is just going to get a ridiculous amount of volume. It doesn't matter that he hasn't shown it to us on the NFL field before. I think the projection's just going to be there from a pure target share perspective. So yeah, Adam Trautman at the 1105. I just have to kind of sit here and take my L. Y'all know I'm always the first person to say, well, I'm stupid. Let's try to reevaluate our stance. Let's try to go out there and be more accurate from here on out. So just because I think we were a little too low on Adam Trautman over the past 2 weeks, that's not going to keep me from admitting that I was wrong. We are going to have to move Adam Trautman up, where I think he does belong in the same range of an Irv Smith Jr. I think he belongs in the same range of a Robert Tonyan if we have these serious concerns with Thomas. Because another thing that we have to understand is this is a team with Jameis Winston and Taysom Hill at starting quarterback. And I'm not going to say that affects Michael Thomas that much, but when you know that you have that combination of starting QBs, are we expecting the New Orleans Saints to be a playoff team this year? I think most likely they're missing the playoffs. Maybe they are a fringe playoff team just based off coaching, just based on a defense and an offensive line. But at the end of the day, I think that we could easily see the bottom fall out on this team with the departure of Drew Brees. And if that's going to be the case, and Michael Thomas is clearly not a happy camper with the New Orleans Saints, I doubt the New Orleans Saints are a happy camper right now with Michael Thomas. What happens if he's healthy in week 7? This team is 2-5. Are they really going to be willing to go out there and even do anything about drafting a Michael Thomas? I don't think so. I think that they're going to be looking at it going, well, we don't care that fantasy owners drafted Michael Thomas in the 8th round. Michael Thomas, we don't necessarily care about getting you on the field. This is a lost season for us anyway. We're just going to kind of save face here. Maybe we look to trade you. Maybe we just look to shut you down for the season because we need to test out some of these other guys that we have on the roster. So Thomas, I understand that he's most likely only going to be injured for the first 7 weeks, but at the same time, there are just so many red flags that we have to kind of go out there and avoid. Okay, so JN coming in with a donation. Let me get to this donation right before we get over to our next injury we are going to be talking about. And JN says, shout out to my clearly genius sarcasm decision to trade Michael Thomas for Nyheim Hines, Hayden Hurst, the 112, the 212, the 312, and our best ball dynasty flock league. I think that was like the best ball 4 flock league. My man, obviously that trade's looking way better now, but I'll say the time you made it, it was a very bad deal. The time you made it was a bad deal, but yeah, thanks for bringing that up. And now let's go over to Indianapolis, because this is just a yo-yo situation where with Indianapolis, y'all know that, I mean, we have said this so many times before. We initially had Jonathan Taylor ranked as the 7th player overall. And then you have the injury to Carson Wentz. We have to drop him down to the 201 because we're looking at it with a very unclear timetable of Carson Wentz. Kind of worried that Carson Wentz is most likely going to miss the first 6 weeks of the year. Then you have the Quentin Nelson injury. Quentin Nelson, one of the best offense guards in the entire NFL. He goes down with that same exact injury. So all of a sudden we're sitting here going, okay, well, maybe we actually have Quentin Nelson missing that same amount of time. But reports came out today saying, hell, both of these players could be good by week 1. And if you have both of these players good by week 1, you know how many running backs are more talented than Jonathan Taylor? You know how many offensive lines are better than the Indianapolis Colts? Do not ever bring up the name Marlon Mack when discussing Jonathan Taylor. Marlon Mack literally means nothing. Marlon Mack was a significantly inferior player to Jonathan Taylor the day Jonathan Taylor stepped in to Indianapolis. Taylor is a running back that came out. He had 3 2,000-yard seasons in a row at Wisconsin at 18, 19, 20 years old. He totaled 6,000 yards in college in 3 seasons before he was 21 years old. He comes out and he just destroys the NFL combine. He's prototypical size to be a 3-down running back. Compared to Marlon Mack, I know Marlon Mack was a very good high school recruit. He goes to a very small school in Florida. Then all of a sudden he gets drafted in, I believe, the 4th round to the Indianapolis Colts. Please correct me if I am wrong, but I believe it was the 2017 draft. He got drafted in the 4th round. I know that we're live streaming right now, and usually I'm correct when I just bring up all these random little stats, but I just want to make sure because I know there's going to be someone in the comment section go, oh no, he went at the end of the 3rd. Let me check. Okay, yeah, no. So in the 2017 draft, he goes with the compensatory pick in the 4th round. A night and day difference between the 2 running backs. We know Marlon Mack tears his Achilles. It was already Jonathan Taylor up here, Marlon Mack down here. Marlon Mack tears his Achilles. We know those running backs, they don't come back and they don't provide that same type of production. Marlon Mack goes even further down. I think Marlon Mack's very similar to what Jordan Wilkins has been the past few years, just a depth running back. So now we're looking at a situation where Jonathan Taylor projects to be one of the most talented running backs in the NFL, behind one of the best offensive lines in the NFL. Now, of course, we can't just automatically run and jump Jonathan Taylor up back in our rankings to the 107 until we have more reports. And I'll say he probably is never going to reach that range again, because I really wanted to see Carson Wentz have the full training camp, the full preseason with the Indianapolis Colts to kind of get implemented into that offense, to get the rapport with the receivers, so the overall offense is going to be a little more efficient. But still, we have to look at this. We have to go, okay, well, we have to figure out exactly how high we are going to be raising up a Jonathan Taylor, because we go through, like I said, I dropped him to the 207. And in those drafts that we've been doing every night, there have been a lot of teams that have actually been able to draft Jonathan Taylor in the mid to late second round, which it looks like that price is not going to be available anymore. We have to figure out what we are willing to spend. But I mean, there are like 2 or 3 teams that we were able to start getting a Devontae Adams at the 104 and then getting a Jonathan Taylor at the 209. So if we pull up the most recent Flock Underdog League that we did, like I said, we live stream every single night. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you hit the bell. Anyway, Jonathan Taylor went at the 205. Now, this is a little before he was actually going in the majority of the other drafts. In this particular draft, he goes directly ahead of Najee Harris and Joe Mixon. And I have seen both of those running backs get drafted over Jonathan Taylor since the injury news to both Quentin Nelson and Carson Wentz. So I think now at this point, when we have the positive buzz about him, Taylor is a completely fine pick over both Mixon and Harris. I think we actually prefer Jonathan Taylor. Now, the question is, when we get to the tier of guys like an Antonio Gibson, a Nick Chubb, an Austin Eckler, and this is where it gets a little more difficult. I will say that Jonathan Taylor would clearly be ahead of all these running backs if you had Carson Wentz and if you had Quentin Nelson, never of having any of these injury concerns. But now I think we're in a point where it's a little more of a gray area, and I definitely think that we need to continue to track the reports coming out. But my initial reaction is I think we are going to move Jonathan Taylor up ahead of Antonio Gibson, ahead of Nick Chubb, ahead of Austin Eckler. And I think we're most likely going to move him in our rankings, where currently I'm not going to say our order of these running backs. Of course, guys, if y'all haven't heard by now, if you go through, if you deposit $10 on Underdog Fantasy, play in some $10 drafts, you get paid $25 by Underdog Fantasy when you use promo code FLOCK. And at the same time, you get our 2021 draft guide. You get our 2021 Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide. You get our 2021 rankings and tiers, all for a $10 deposit. You're getting paid $25. You're getting my draft guide. You're getting my rankings. You're getting my tiers, hundreds of pages of information. You can't pass up on that deal, and it helps the channel tremendously. But anyway, I'm not going to be running over to that guide, and I'm not going to be jumping up Jonathan Taylor just dramatically in the rankings. I don't want to give out the exact rankings in that guide just yet, though. But if we go through, if we look at the top running backs going in fantasy drafts, you have CMC, Dalvin Cook, Alvin Kamara, Ezekiel Elliott, Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley, and Aaron Jones. So you have 7 top running backs. I actually think you jump Jonathan Taylor up directly behind Aaron Jones. He's going to be in the same tier of the Aaron Jones, Austin Eckler type running backs. We're in a full PPR format. Obviously, you're going to be so excited about the usage in the receiving game that you can get from either an Eckler or an Aaron Jones. Half PPR, maybe Jonathan Taylor actually jumps up over Austin Eckler. So I think at this point, my initial thoughts whenever we have the Carson Wentz and the Quentin Nelson injury updates, I think we actually have to come out. We have to say, okay, well, Taylor most likely jumping up over Antonio Gibson, over Nick Chubb, over Austin Eckler. We cannot move him ahead of Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones is just an unquestioned running back that's going to be going directly before Taylor. But I think at this point, maybe it's going to be smart for us to move back Jonathan Taylor where we moved him down to the 207. Maybe we need to move him back up to the 201. So my initial thought is we're going to move Jonathan Taylor probably up to the 201. I need to see how he stacks up against the wide receivers in that range. But he's now going to be a back half of round 1, early round 2 pick for us instead of the middle of round 2. You are no longer going to be getting that discount that you had on Jonathan Taylor on Underdog Fantasy. I will tell you that he is going to be going higher. And real quick, before we end this live stream, I do want to go through and I do want to check out the chat and see what y'all are saying about this. Okay. So D. Larso says Nelson and Wentz expected to be available week 1. Yes, sir. Like I just said, I don't think the wording on the report is that they're expected to be available week 1, but I do think that it's very likely that they can be. And guys, if y'all have not dropped a like on the live stream by now, what are you doing? Go down there and drop that like. It helps us so much. Bobby says, is Barkley still a first rounder? Barkley is not only still a first rounder, he is a top 5 running back for me. Saquon Barkley, I understand the concerns. Now we are getting reports. I guess we can make this also a video about Barkley. I kind of wanted to make it in our full injury video that we were going to upload maybe either tomorrow or the following day. But with Barkley, comes off the PUP. He's back at practice. We never wavered from having Saquon Barkley as our running back 4. Now, my concern with Barkley is not the injuries. My concern with Barkley is the fact that he's playing behind one of the worst offensive lines in football. But we have already discussed in a full PPR format how these running backs can go around playing behind those very bad offensive lines is with an elite target share, which we've actually seen Saquon Barkley average more targets per game than Alvin Kamara. This is someone that people forget the usage that he can have in the receiving game. A very bad offensive line means Daniel Jones is going to have time to allow Kadarius Toney, Kenny Golladay to run deep downfield. He's going to be under pressure a lot. It's going to be a lot of dump offs to Saquon Barkley. I think Barkley has the same type of ceiling of an Alvin Kamara from a receiving perspective. And at the same time, he's such a big running back. You know, he's going to get every opportunity at the goal line, even if this offense isn't that good where he's not having that many trips down there. Still going to be enough for me to be considerably higher than consensus on Saquon Barkley. As everybody's screaming sell, I'm going, well, yes, there's one thing that's concerning. That's the offensive line, the overall offense. But this running back profile screams that he's the best running back in the NFL behind Saquon Barkley. Behind Christian McCaffrey. And on top of this, we know very few running backs have the receiving capability at that size. So yeah, I'm still going to be on Barkley. Do not let Barkley get out of the first round. Do not let that happen whatsoever. Okay. So I think that it's probably going to be in for this live stream. Guys, like I've said, we are going to be live drafting every single night on this channel. So just make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Make sure that you're hitting the bell next to the subscribe button. That way you know when we go live. That way you can come out to the live streams. You can hop in a fantasy draft with me. You can go up against me. You can get our 2021 draft guide. If you use promo code FLOCK on Underdog Fantasy, you can get our 2021 rankings, hundreds of pages of information. And at the same time, when you deposit $10, Underdog Fantasy is paying you $25 on top of that in credit. So please make sure you take advantage of that deal. And I think that that's most likely going to be it for the stream. I hope that y'all come out tonight. I know this was kind of a emergency stream that I felt like we had to get out with the injury updates to both Quentin Nelson and Carson Wentz, with the entire story developing around Michael Thomas. So yeah, thank you, my dudes, for coming out, and I hope I see y'all tonight. Drop a like on the video if you have not already. If you have not dropped a like, what are you doing?